Years ago, I was teaching a class at the Connection Center here in Memphis, Tennessee. And a friend of mine, Laura, who's known to be a little goofy sometimes, that day was no exception. She comes up to me and says, "Keith, do you want to meet an alien?" And I saw that she was being serious. And so I said, "Sure." So we walked over to this woman, about 5'1", tall. And as soon as I extend my hand to say hello, the energy that came through this 5'1" woman was very male, very robust, very big, was very, very present, very, very different. The intellect of this being, to use a word, was alien. It was very, very foreign. It was just different. It was at a strange slant to it. And I can feel the presence. It was just not earthly. At least this was my first impression. And so I said, "Hi, my name's Keith." And I won't call him by his real name. He asked me not to. I will call him Chuck. Chuck the alien. And so I introduced myself to Chuck, and the first thing out of his mouth, he goes, "What do you want?" I said, "What do you mean what I want?" He goes, "Everybody wants something." I said, "I don't follow." He goes, "You want some help with that?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "You want data." And I just thought that odd. He used the word data. It was just, it just seemed so alien-like. And so over a period of time, after we developed a level of trust between us, he started doing some pretty phenomenal things in front of my face. For example, one day he said, "Keith, do you remember I've been promising you a journey? Today's the day. You're ready. Do you want to go on that journey?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "What do I need to do?" He says, "All you need to do, Keith, is give me your hand." So I give him my hand, and he begins to pull on my arm. And everything I knew as me started leaving my body through my arm, sort of as I'm tugging on this shirt. And I get out about 5 or 6 feet or so, and he lets go, and he said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I'm trying to figure out what or what not to do to make this happen." He goes, "That's your problem right there, Keith. I don't want you to do anything. What I want you to do is just let go." So he starts pulling on my arm again, and I get out about 15 feet or so, and he stops. He says, "We're not doing this anymore." I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Well, some part of you is still holding on, and I'm just not going to violate your free will." He said, "But let me ask you, did you see anything while you were out?" I said, "Yes, I did." He said, "What did you see?" I saw his spaceship. I saw where it was located. It was located 27,000 light years away. There was a knowing involved as well. It was on a planetary station. I went inside the ship. When you walk in the ship, if you want a place to sit down, you just think of a chair, and a chair comes out of the wall. And when you're done with the chair goes back into the wall, back into nothing. They conserve energy on every possible level. It disappears, basically. I saw the technology that ran that ship. It runs on a very large crystal. I've seen everything about this person, his bio, so to speak. He is a galactic cop. He roams the galaxy policing it as if a police officer would roam around a neighborhood, keeping the riffraff out. I also saw that his team, they go around the Milky Way galaxy and they help stars being born. And they destroy certain planets or whatever celestial bodies that are no longer viable to the galaxy or to the universe. He has awareness in 6 dimensions. He's about 7 foot tall. He is part gray and part human. His dad was an Egyptian king. He's 4,000, he's about 4,730 years old. Their technology is so advanced, it allows them that once they die, they can rejuvenate the body half that time. And then once they die a second time, they can rejuvenate the body half that time. After that, the body is spent and they just move on to another level of consciousness entirely. And so, another day, he asked me, calls me on the phone, "Keith, everyone in our group," we had a selected few friends, we would have a meditation group every other Sunday, and he said, "Everyone in our group has an implant, but you. Do you want it?" He says, "I make them myself. You cannot see it, they're so small." He says, "It's yours if you want it." I said, "Well, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks?" He says, "Well, Keith, The benefits are, if you are sick, we can administer medicine through the implant. If you are lost, for whatever reasons, we can find you. And if you're in trouble, we can help you. And so forth and so on. He named a few more perks. And I said, okay, what's the drawback? He says, do you have anything you are ashamed of? And I actually considered for a moment. I said, no, I think everything's fine. He says, do you want it? I said, yes, I do. He says, by the next time you and I speak, be it in public, face-to-face or over the phone, this will be implanted. I said, good deal. So I go play music that night. I was playing at the casino. And I did 5 sets, and I come home about 3 o'clock in the morning. Dog tired. The last thing on my mind is dreaming, and much less about aliens. But 7 o'clock in the morning, I came to a state of consciousness while my body was sleeping because of an excruciating pain in my right kidney region. And if you ever had a kidney stone, you know what that feels like. And so I look over my shoulder to find out the source of this pain, and there's the equivalent of like a 65-year-old, 70-year-old alien woman administering this implant in my kidney area. And she's laughing at me with the attitude like, you know, Keith, you went into this thing thinking it would hurt, and so therefore you're right. And again, this pain was so intense. She picks me up when she was done. She walks me over to where he was sitting, which looked to be somewhat like a lawn chair. And because the pain was so much, I began to vomit all over his feet. And he begins to laugh, and he does one of these kind of things. My phone rings. I answer the phone, groggy, hello? And guess who it is? It's Chuck. And I said, dude, I just had a dream about you. He says, no, Keith, you didn't dream. I said, what do you mean? He says, it wasn't a dream at all. He says, you were actually here. I said, you sure about that? He says, well, the vomit all over my shoes tells me you were. He says, Keith, Wendy, have you guys ever seen a fairy before? No, I hadn't. And Wendy's going, oh my God, Keith, is he for real? I said, I'm afraid so. So we're about to see a fairy. And so he says, well, she's down the road here on the right, about 50 feet. She's going to be sitting on a leaf on this plant. And so we walk down there, and he raises up this plant leaf, and there's a globule of light, I kid you not, about the size of a marble. And he says, Keith, Wendy, Laura, meet Perithnia. And this little ball of light, he began to communicate with this ball of light, and this little orb would start glowing as if it was communicating back. And he says, Perithnia wants us to follow her. So she gets off of the plant and starts bouncing down the road, and we proceeded to follow her a few feet. He says she wants to show us something. And as we're walking to the next destination, somehow she had to take off. He said, she's got to go, and off she went, just zipped away. And Wendy is just beside herself, and I'm beside myself. One day, we were at a Chinese restaurant after a church service. And there was a huge round table that we were all sitting at. There was probably 6, 7, 8 of us. And he says, Keith, I'm speaking actually at this time to the woman. And she talks in this very high-pitched voice. And out of nowhere, he comes in and the voice changes, the demeanor changes, the whole body changes, the whole expression changes. And I'm telling you, this cannot be faked. I can see, believe me, I can see. And there's no way even the best actor can pull this off. And so she's talking, he comes in, and he says, Keith, do you want an invisible friend? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, someone to play with you, someone to put thoughts in your head that will guide you. I said, sure. He said, scoot your chair back. So I scoot my chair back. He goes, Keith, scoot your chair back. I'm about to sit somebody in your lap. And he raises up his hand, and my ears begin to ring. And I literally feel this being sit on my lap. And my girlfriend at the time, Wendy, she's going, oh my God, Keith, there's someone sitting there. I said, there's someone sitting in my lap. She goes, Chuck, can I have a friend too? He says, scoot your chair back, Wendy. So Wendy scoots her chair back. And you should have seen the look on her face. The look on her face was convincing. And these are just some of the experiences I had surrounding my friend Chuck.